Hey, folks, and welcome to the show. It is Counter Clipping Show number 127, I think, for June 12th, 2023. We got a whole bunch of stuff to get to tonight, and we do have a giveaway, which I will reveal at some point during the show. So we are going to take care of that as well. So I would like to welcome everybody and thank you all for coming out. For those who don't know, because we kept forgetting, or I kept forgetting to say so, the Tuesday show with Dan is going to get rebranded just a little bit and moved to Thursdays. And this is our first week on Thursdays. So I don't know who our guest is going to be yet. The guest might be totally mental. And I'm not talking about Dan. If he gets the person he's talking about, then it's going to be something else. So tune in for that 7:30 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time on Thursday night, right here and on Dan's channel as well, and we'll get that taken care of. Unboxings are on hold at the moment until something arrives that is worth doing an unboxing video for. That could end up being on to Richmond 2, which in tonight's pre-order roundup we will not get to because it is already shipping and definitely people are already receiving it. I have not gotten a shipping notice yet, and I looked to see when it went up versus when I put the order in, and I was not fast on the ball on that particular one. So I would guess I'll get a shipping notification maybe sometime this week, maybe next week. We will see. I will get it, and there will be an unboxing of that. For those who haven't seen the latest couple of videos over at the Tabletop's Edge, Doug over there has begun a series on TCS, the Tactical Combat System, which we will see a little bit about tonight. If you're interested or have found that series intriguing, go ahead and check those videos out. They are very interesting, and as a course of consequence, I have ordered 5 TCS games. So my previous clipping project, Black, and I think I mentioned that Black last week. My previous clipping project, Black Wednesday, is fully clipped and fully loaded into the S24 tray, the models for which are available for those with 3D printers and those who are swordsman and up level patrons. So let me put the banner up and give a big shout out to John Wolf, who is our new swordsman level patron this week. And John is already using the trays and his results are looking really good. So a caveat on these, I don't intend to say that you got to put your counters in these particular trays. There are many, many, many games, probably the vast majority of games, for which a good old GMT counter tray will work just fine. But for those that don't, or for those who are short on box space, this is an alternative I'm finding is working fairly well. So unfortunately, the light brown color that I've been using for the Soviets appears to be out of stock, non-mail orderable, and simply no longer available through Micro Center, which is where I've been buying this stuff. So I'm going to have to find an alternative for Soviets. I mean, I could always use red, right? But most of the World War II games have Soviet units in brown, I have found. So before we get started on any of that, where's my thing with the people? Let's give a shout out to 6 Actual, Bill Simone, Brent McCabe, Kafka666, Chad Kennedy, Charles Latorra, David Imperato, David Zell, Eric Schaefer, Failure to Route, GWG Gaming with Garavalia, HUN644, the legend himself, Fucko is in the house. Jason W., Jason Williams, who are presumably not the same Jason W., Jeff Anderson, Jeff Beeler, Joe Okabayashi, John Longshore is in the house, John Stanley, John C. from the sunny Philippines. It's been sunny for 4 weeks here. Today it rained for the first time in like 3 or 4 weeks. It kind of sucks. John Clark, Lee Grant, Manders, Meandering Mike, Michael Simon, Mo Romaniak, Nordic Maelstrom, Perry Spiropoulos, I probably mangled that, Rick Cox, Rudy Armendariz, Stacking Limit, The One True Phlegm, Vicky, welcome back to the show, William Aarons, and William Bird. So tonight's topic is the pre-order rundown. And we've done like individual games, like individual publishers with this. I'm going to try doing it a little differently and try to make this like a once a year thing. And props to the Board Gaming Chronicle that gave me the idea. But I'm doing it on video, and they did it as a blog post, and their blog post is very good, and there are some very interesting things there. And then, of course, the Player's Aid does kind of an upcoming pre-orders thing, more or less once a month, I believe. But this is probably going to be an annual thing because we are going to try to cover the top 20 to 25 games, in my opinion, that are coming out from a variety of different publishers rather than from just one publisher like GMT or whatever. Because that format leaves me like unable to handle some publishers that might only have two things or one thing on pre-order at any given time. I can't fill a whole show with, hey, today's our pre-order for Flying Pig Games. There's one thing they got on pre-order. Looks awesome though. So that's just, kind of the way it is. And if I haven't mentioned it, we will have a giveaway tonight. My email address is in the ticker, and it is ardwulflair@gmail.com if anybody wants to get a hold of me for whatever. And whoever wins the giveaway will need that email address as well, because we're going to handle that exactly how we normally handled it. Stigler, it wasn't me that snubbed you. It was YouTube. That's how that works. So Stigler is in the house as well. Harold Demi 1942, welcome to the stream. If you have not been here before. As usual on the giveaway, I will ask if anybody is not in the US who wins, I will ask them to help me with the shipping costs. Usually a 50-50 split seems to be equitable to everybody except that one person who decided to complain. In any case, we are drinking tonight something a little different. We are drinking Plantation Rum. This is the original dark double aged. It is unfortunately bottled at 40%. It would be better at 48 or 46 or something upstairs of 40, but it's pretty good. It is eminently sippable, and I am drinking it out of a Glencairn with no water in it, and it's 40%. Maybe you put water in it, maybe you don't. Not necessary in this particular case. I had looked into Ardwulf's Lair branded Glencairn glasses, and there are people that run like whiskey channels that do that. And it was just not economical. It did not make any sense. So there will be no official Ardwulf's Lair Glencairn glasses unless that landscape changes. So I apologize for that. So we will be doing some very interesting things. In addition, tomorrow in the slot that's recently freed up, of course, I immediately filled the slot up with something else because that's just the way it worked out. We have a very special interview show about wargaming the Ardennes with special guests Danny Parker and John Butterfield. So please do check that out. Both, I think one can say, masters of bulge design. So Todd Cox says 3D print some glasses, and that's not a bad idea. But you can't do that with PLA, which is what I'm using. So we will not be doing that. In fact, we are clipping today Vulcan Fury from Diffraction Entertainment. If I am going to try this series, it is going to be this game. I'm aware that there's a new version, which I think is not out, but it's real close. That greatly expands the counter set, at least. But that is okay. I am happy to play it with this one because I would like to I'd like to actually try this game system out at some point instead of relying on my reading of the rules. So it is going to be probably not in the terribly immediate future. That said, the game room out here is real close to being done. We've got the gate up, which thus it is going to be live, William Bird. We've got the gate up to keep the cats out. It's working so far, but there hasn't been anything set up to tempt the cats either. So the soundproofing tiles are on the wall. It looks pretty cool if you've seen the pictures on social media, I think. And the carpet's down. So I need probably a couple of more chairs, but other than that, we're basically ready to go. And I got my spacers to put to put a surface of some kind, whether that's another piece of plexi or a piece of wood or whatever. I just don't have a piece of wood on top of the table, so I can, when I walk away, I don't have to deal with that. So we're real close to having actual gaming happening here at this actual gaming channel. Now, here are let me start getting into tonight's topic here. Charles Latour has got Napoleon's Wheel getting set up. That's fantastic. Jeff Beeler asks about Miku Games, a board game developer and designer since 2003, based in Sweden, focused on the Second World War and the Finno-Russian conflict in general. That's not the folks that did the finished trilogy, is it? If not, then I don't think so. Um, but E4 Airman, welcome to the stream. It's not me, it's YouTube. It's just the way the thing works. So there's this list of participants in the chat. But that's exactly what they are. They're not viewers, they're participants in the chat. So if I didn't see you and you haven't said anything in the chat in, I don't know, 5 minutes or whatever it is, then you get dropped off the list. So sorry about that. Write your angry letters to the fine folks at Google or whatever the hell they're calling themselves now. So we got some very interesting things on the pre-order list, and you could kind of consider this like a top 20 to 25 list, but not necessarily an exhaustive top 20 to 25 list, because I did make it a point to spread the love around to a variety of publishers, not just GMT, Compass, and MMP. Um, Between the three of whom, I haven't run this number anytime recently, but I would venture to say that between those three companies, they make up at least 75% of my library. But I mean, then again, GMT is probably 40 by themselves. The percentage of GMT has been going down in the last couple of years because I've been buying more stuff from other places, not necessarily less from GMT, however. And you will find that there's plenty of GMT stuff on this list. So, yeah, Michael Simon says that Miku Games did the finished trilogy. Those go for a large chunk of cash. So they look really good. And they're well regarded, but they are out of my price range given the amount of interest I have in the topic. I do not have zero games in that topic. It is, after all, basically a World War II topic. Brant from the Armchair Dragoons is here. Don't forget, folks, that we are going to be featuring Origins coverage, and that starts next week. Yeah, something like that. Yeah, next week. So I will be departing on Wednesday, and I don't know if I'll bring you a video or on Wednesday or not. Kind of depends on what the Wi-Fi situation is. And you never know. You might not see any video till Monday, but there will be Origins coverage. John Stanley, thank you so much. Much appreciated. Well, stay tuned on that, John. We might, in fact, have it on this list. Hissy Cat Studios, welcome back to the show. Michael Simon says that the finished trilogy is a great set of games, very nice looking, labor of love for the game made them. Clearly, I mean, you're going to do a trilogy on that. I think that means that you are, in fact, quite serious about that topic. So, and of course, Stigler is poo-pooing the rum because he hates rum, I'm sure. It's something different, I wanted something different. So, well, we might we might talk about several of these. So the rules here for this, what I already said. I kind of want to spread it out and kind of showcase something that is really awesome looking from as many publishers as I could, and I didn't get that many. Kilroy of Kilroy Was Here is in fact here and reminds everybody to vote in the Charles S. Roberts Awards. There should be a link in the video description, I think, and if not, go to charlessrobertsawards.com, and the first posted article there will contain that link. I like whiskey the best. It's not fixated, and I got nothing to do with it. And I have a whiskey hierarchy too. So, Jeff Beeler says he's got a buddy who has a copy of Tornio 44, finished naval landing behind the German lines, published, and it looks very interesting. Drunken Finnish Soldiers rule sounds amazing, actually. It's my... Yeah, well, I guess I'm not finding it now. My glasses are filthy, and I'm having trouble seeing. So, and yes, please do like the video, thumbs up the video, all that stuff. Clip that, whatever we're saying, clip that like button. And if you're not subscribed to the channel already, and believe it or not, the majority of people that watch are not subscribed. And I suspect it's people that don't have YouTube accounts or don't realize they have YouTube accounts, which is also possible. Anybody with an Android phone, in fact, has a YouTube account because they have a Google account, and you need a Google account to sign into an Android phone. So if you're not subscribed, subscribe. And if you'd like to do more to help support the channel, there is a link to all of the various ways to do that, including the merch store and the Ko-Fi and the Patreon, which is the best way to support the channel. The easiest for me, let me put it that way. And super chats and super stickers are also on. Michael Simon asks about the Total War pre-order. So, a mean individual posted a picture of Total War components on Facebook like last week, and people got excited, hysterical excited, and they're like, "No, man, this is not the actual game. They printed the maps, the counters, and the boxes, and that's all this person has." And various playtest versions of the rules and OBs have been on circulation. Bayonet Brand asks if we're going to try to go live from the convention center. I think we will try. I don't know if it will work, but I think Brant might have a workaround for that. So we might we will I intend to try. Let me put it that way. I make no promises that it will actually work. The Wi-Fi inside the convention center, if those of you who watched the live dealer's room walkthrough that I did 3 or 4 years ago, if you watch that, you'll know that the live Wi-Fi in that dealer's hall is terrible. So I think I assume these to be German units. No, I'm wrong. These are Italians, actually. Okay. So much for that. This series does kind of carry forward some of the intriguing color choices, like dark gray on black counters that it inherited from its spiritual predecessors. Let's put it that way. But in any case, we are a clipping, and there's 4 counter sheets in this thing. I'll point out that I consider Balkan Front or Marina Mercur, whichever one you got, to be one of like the best Europa games. I think it's a really nice little operational puzzle. It's not it's meaty, but it's not too big. So you can play it in a couple of sessions or a weekend or whatever. If you're really fast, you might be able to even play it in a single sitting. But if so, you'd be faster than me and our group. And it's not like that was our first try at Europa either. So yeah, that's John Friesen. Welcome back to the stream. And of course, the Total War thing has become a running joke. So in any case, here are the rules. Other than trying to highlight multiple publishers, I am not including any reprints in this list. Did I stick to that? I think I did. I hope I stuck to that. Oh dear, I didn't stick to that. There's one reprint in this list, but it is a substantial redesign, so it's not just a reprint. And also that means that the latest printings of Commands and Color stuff are not going to make this list. And I did try to steer clear generally of new versions of old games that don't look to be complete redesigns. The 2 that are in here are substantial redesigns. Let me put it that way. So, I also did not put any expansions on this list. There's more than enough actual sized games that I didn't feel the need to put expansions in there. And on my personal list, if you look at the various publishers that we talk about a lot over here, there are some fairly highly anticipated sci-fi games. I also left those off the list. So bear all those things in mind. We've got the Greeks done, by the way. We're now working on whoever these green guys are. Hungarians, perhaps? I'm not sure. Nordic Maelstrom says that the OSG Library of Napoleonic Battles rules are really nice. I agree. It is also pretty easy to play. Just bear in mind the scale, right? It's kind of a very grand tactical scale. And Stigler can argue with that as usual, but Jeff Beeler says, how often will the Third World War game at Origins be updated? I'm not 100% sure what you mean by that. We are going to play through as far as we get in the 3 days and 6 4-hour sessions that we have. And when we're done with the session, we will walk away and we'll come back and pick up where we left off. And anybody who is only there for that slot can drop right in and we'll teach them how to play. It is totally fine. If you are seeking tournament level play of the Third World War from Compass, this is not the event for you. But if you want to try it out, it is optimal. So Nordic Maelstrom asks, what OSG Library of Napoleonic Battles game is my favorite? I have all of them. Probably my favorite is the Coming Storm. That is the 1807. Might start in late 1806, but I think it's 1807 game that includes, I think Pultusk, Eylau, and Friedland. But there are a lot of games that pack a lot of stuff in there, right? The Last Success, which is 1809, which has Asper Nestling and Wagram. That's really good. Napoleon's Last Gamble is really good. Not necessarily because of the 4 battles it contains, which are the 4 main battles of the 100 Days. Also includes a 5th battle that took place about a week later, with French General Rapp against somebody, I forget who, maybe some Austrians, and they won the battle, as I recall, but it was too late by then. So Sicily 2, which is in the Operational Matters reprint, I didn't include that either because that's also we considered that a reprint. I would expect the Last Success and the Coming Storm to eventually show up again. OSG does do reprints. All right, so let's get now. These are not in a specific order because I thought that might be unfair to certain people who may actually be watching tonight. So it is a randomized order, so bear that in mind. And number 1 here on that randomized list is the Axis Empires Ultimate Edition from our good friends and paragons of game quality, Decision Games. This is a design by Alan Emmerich, Salvatore Vasta, and Thomas Prowl. I have owned, but I got rid of when this was coming out, and I have no visibility on when this thing is coming. It's like at least 2 or 3 years late at this point. This is a consolidated edition with both previous games in the same box with a bunch of expansion material as well. Now, a little leery of that expansion material, but nevertheless, the games on their own are excellent and are worth having. Now, I do think that the current edition, which may or may not still be available, is Axis Empires Totaler Krieg and Axis Empires Dicenso. And Dicenso, of course, is the Pacific, and the Pacific is flatly not as engaging as Europe is in that system. If you play it on its own, if you play it with Europe, then it's fine. There's nothing really wrong with it. You know what, David Imperato, Decision Games historically has not been particularly late, and that's been a problem when they took the attitude that, well, this is the date, that's the end of it, send it to the printer, and the game turned out to be maybe not so tight as had been hoped. So I actually take the delay on this to be a very good sign. This is going to be something like $250 MSRP. It is available on pre-order or pledge, as they call it over Decision, like the furniture polish. And I think these are Italians. These are, I think, black shirts, actually. So I have included links to every one of the games on the list. If you want to cheat and take a look at it, I guess go ahead. In the video description, so you can actually check that stuff out. In a couple of cases, the links were hard to find, and I wanted people to be able to find this stuff. And if I was doing it for 2 of the games, I was doing it for all of the games. So next up here is Cuius Regio. This is from GMT. Designer on this is, I wrote these down and I don't have this designer, Francisco Gradial. I can't find it on the list, but I remembered it. And this is a game about the 30 Years' War. It is a hex and counter game. It looks extremely promising, and the map and counters, at least, look extremely attractive. So I am pretty excited about this personally. This is an interesting topic that is very seldom dealt with on a hex map at this scale. So I'm very interested in this game. Stigler says, I am a DG enabler. DG enabler. No, I just tell people the way I see it. They have some good games. They have some bad games. They have more either bad games or games with serious, significant problems than good games. So caveat emptor. That's all. That's true of everybody. But for my money, and it's my money I'm spending. Um, the do your research, right? And it is 240, yeah, $240. That's the pledge price. It is huge, right? So it ends up being a four map game. There's over 500 cards in there. There's going to be, I guess, 6 or 8 counter sheets or something like that. You're getting a lot of material there, and you can play either game individually or play the whole thing together. Up to you. And the additional material should also be fairly modular, by the way. So if you don't like Schiffkrieg, which is the module to provide expanded air and naval rules, which is the part that I'm most leery about, to be frank, then I think you can just not use that. Now, that is one of the banner, headline things that come with Axis Empire's Ultimate Edition. So, make that decision based on that. So there's a very abstract air naval system in that game that I think works really well for Europe and substantially less well for the Pacific. And that's one of the issues with playing Dicenso on its own. So the hope, I think, is that it will give you enough meat to sink your teeth into in the Pacific without cocking Europe up. And I'm not sure, I have confidence in the designers. Let me put it that way. The publisher, less so. I mean, I take the opposite position from time to time as well on other matters, but that's the way it is. Anyway, Cuius Regio is coming out from GMT. Now, I actually first got some visibility on this in a Stuka Joe video that he did live from IlBeotaCon in Spain, where a presumed playtest copy was on the table. And I don't know who did those playtest graphics, but somebody should be paying that person. Because even the playtest thing looks really, really, really nice. Jason W says, Cuius Regio borrows mechanics from GCACW. Always a good idea. Not always a good idea, but in this case, I think it might well be an excellent idea. There are people talking about miniatures in the chat, and that is okay, but I am unable to participate meaningfully in that conversation. So next up is Europe in Turmoil 2 from designer Chris Van Beurden. The same designer as Europe in Turmoil 1. Now, this is kind of a matched set in that they're also reprinting Europe in Turmoil in a deluxe edition with a mono map and all that fancy stuff. Now, this is supposed to be a pretty good, the first one is supposed to be a pretty good game. It is the diplomatic and political lead up to World War One, and Europe in Turmoil 2 is, to me, even more interesting topic, which is the period between World War One and World War Two, 1920 to 1939 in this particular case. So I'm actually pretty excited about this, and I am good for some coverage whenever this comes out. Now, this is going by the first Europe in Turmoil, which I, by the way, have not played, but it is a system heavily inspired by Twilight Struggle. Let me put it that way. John C. says that Europe in Turmoil is very good. And I have no particular position on that other than to observe that it does appear to be fairly popular. There's a tournament at Compass Expo that appears to be very well attended. And that's worth something. May or may not be a fact that leads me to buy the game, but if I got one of them, I might end up buying the other one too. But to me, topically, this is more interesting, and I'm curious to see what they do with it and what sources they used to inform the gameplay. So, and this, I don't have any visibility on when this is coming out exactly. I did not research that. There's a lot going on over here, folks, as usual, as you'll all no doubt be aware. There's a whole awards thing happening right now that is sucking a little bit of the oxygen out of the room at the moment. And I was warned, so I can't say that that's the case. So moving on is whatever number we're on now. I don't even know. This is the Greatest Day, Utah Beach. Now, as I mentioned before, On to Richmond 2 is not on this list because it is no longer a pre-order. It is already shipping, and you can no longer get it at the pre-order price. I am happy to report that MMP is no longer doing that silly thing that they used to do where they'd say, we're shipping the pre-orders now, so we will remove the game from our website just as pictures of people getting it are starting to show up on social media and excitement is starting to build. It's removed from the website. They don't do that anymore, and that's good. But you have lost the window has closed on the pre-order price, and the non-pre-order price is up $220. So bear that in mind. I guess I'll also mention, and Stigler will know when this is occurring. There's that GBACW / GCACW collaboration fest in Gettysburg, and that's coming up pretty soon. And if you're thinking of going to that, there's info on this on Facebook. And if you're thinking of going to that, you better make your hotel reservations like literally today in the next 24 hours or so, because you're about the window for the event block is about to close, and the per night rate is about to go up by like $75 a night. So apparently the days in Gettysburg costs normally 189 a night, which is really high for a days in. I appreciate that it's in Gettysburg and maybe it's the only hotel there, but that's a bit rich. That's more than I pay for the Hyatt for Buckeye Game Fest in downtown Columbus. So in any case, the Greatest Day Utah Beach is this is designed by a new designer to the system, as far as I know, Tom Holliday. And it is the Grand Tactical series, the series by designer Adam Starkweather with MMP. And I don't none of the CSS games are on this list, but that's because none of the CSS games that are of interest to me are on pre-order right now. There are a few somewhere in the CSS pipeline. But the next one is another one of those modern hypothetical things that I just don't need to do. So Stigler says $99 a night if you take advantage of the block rate, and the dates are July 14th through the 23rd. It promises to be a really cool event. Plus it's, in Gettysburg, so that's cool too. Stigler says that Days In is in the middle of Gettysburg in July. Oh, that's a good point. I didn't think of that. Perhaps next time schedule it for the following week. But yeah, it's going to be pretty close to the anniversary of the battle. It is actually the following week, but it's going to be pretty close to the anniversary of the battle, July 1st through 3rd, after all. So that is probably going to be a thing. So let's get back to the Greatest Day Utah Beach. E4 Airman says that Chambersburg is not a quick drive to Gettysburg. Tim Zales says that Utah is going to be a game you're going to regret not getting. So if you already have, this is also expensive, by the way, but as is the case with most of the GTS games, it's going to have tons of scenarios, small scenarios, big scenarios, huge scenarios. By itself, it is pretty big. And if you have the Greatest Day Gold Gentleman Sword, I think you definitely want this, but you make up your own mind. Tony Mammal says that Denny's in Gettysburg has charging $49.99 for the Grand Slam breakfast, which is, not surprising, I suppose. I haven't eaten at a Denny's in years, and I don't need to. So, so you guys are, Charles the Torah. I think that what you're observing here is just the fact that I don't talk much about miniatures. So generally speaking, there might be some folks around here who dabble in miniatures, and I'm probably going to offend somebody by saying that way. But mostly we're not a miniatures crowd around here. There's nothing wrong with your however many miniature figures that you're playing with. But I just don't have the bandwidth to deal with that. So Stigler says, pop over to Consim World. Best of luck on that. American Civil War Forum, GBACW talk, to get more info on the minicon and planning for games and events. And again, this is, even though it's like a GBACW event, they are collaborating with the GCACW people. So you'll be able to play either series, and they're both really good. And we're going to see on to Richmond too, like hopefully before that. Hopefully. Pete Bartlett, thanks for stopping by. Much appreciated. Just in time for the MMP stuff. I have MMP stuff scattered all over the place on this list. I also did kind of randomize the list, not in a systematic way. Jeff Beeler, The Greatest Day Omaha, which will cap off this particular trilogy, is in the pipeline, but I wouldn't expect it anytime soon. It's going to be the most challenging of those beaches to do, and I think it's going to be the least interesting to play on its own, believe it or not, as a campaign, right? Because once the Americans do get off the beaches, there's not a lot to stop them. So you're going to see a lot of American advancing, and without playing it alongside the other two games, I think that's going to be a little less interesting after the first, say, 2 days. So did I miss something? Oh, Stick says last time he ate in Gettysburg, everybody loved Tom Petty. My sister, who doesn't like that kind of music at all, likes Tom Petty. Like literally nobody disliked Tom Petty. So that is was a tragedy. Everybody likes Tom Petty. Safe to say. There is a Perkins in Gettysburg instead of Denny's. No problem. I think this is a no-brainer, actually. When in Gettysburg, visit the Gettysburg Museum of History. Yeah, no kidding. Also, there's a little toy soldier store in Gettysburg too, which might be worth checking out on its own. So bear that in mind. I have very high expectations for The Greatest Day at Utah Beach. I have already seen what I was told at the time were the final maps, but there were some modifications made after that. They are wonderful looking maps, great, nice clear counters, oversized counters, which is also handy. Game system is a lot of fun to play. Hopefully this will be out soon, but and I know there will be GTS gaming happening at Consim World Expo in Tempe. And last I heard, that was going to be The Greatest Day Gold Gentleman Sword, but this might be out by then. If so, that would be great. This should be pretty close, and I think it's going to hit this year. MMP's pipeline, possibly because they're not waiting for stuff from China, does seem to be shorter, right, than a lot of other places, and maybe that's because they do the collation themselves and they're just parsing it out in a sensible way so that they know if the counters, for example, or whatever it is, has the most lead time. They send that first. Maybe they send the boxes first. Who knows? But and On Richmond 2's got a 3-inch box apparently, which I appreciate. But I have, come to peace with my storage solutions in that. So that's the only reason there's not a GCACW game on this list, is that the only one on pre-order at the moment is already shipping out the door. So next up is Gettysburg from Worthington Publishing. So this is part of the Civil War Brigade Battle Series, and it is the largest game in the series that they've done to date. Let me rephrase that. It's the largest battle that they've done in the series to date. The 7 Days box, which was the last one in the series, might actually be similarly sized in terms of components. But this is decent size, and it is brigade level Gettysburg game, so it's not going to be playable incredibly quickly. But this system is, I would say, if we say that GBACW represents the kind of upper rung of complexity in terms of Civil War tactical or grand tactical games, and we say that Blind Swords is about 2 rungs lower than that. I'd say Line of Battle is 1 rung lower than that, and Blind Swords is another rung lower than that. Then this Civil War Brigade Battle Series is another rung lower than that. But it's a nice system. It plays pretty well, and the only problems I've had with it are with game specific rules in the Antietam game. And I believe there is some gameplay of this series in the channel history if you want to check these out. Now, I'm not personally buying these just because I am up to my friggin' eyeballs in Gettysburg games and Civil War games in general. But this series does get a pretty good recommendation from me. If you want a Civil War tactical that's a little higher level, so you're not dealing with so many pieces, particularly in a huge battle like this, and you want it to play very quickly and very easily, and there's no facing or line of sight. You don't really have to worry about any of that stuff. There is line of sight, but it's very easy. So I actually think this is a pretty strong series for people who are in the market for this kind of thing. The other games are the 7 Days game that they did, I want to say last year, and the Antietam and Shiloh games, and I might be missing one, but I don't think so. And this is a this is a Wiley and family design, if I'm not mistaken. I actually didn't write this down who the designer was, which was interestingly dumb decision. The chat feed blocks the picture of the box front. Well, I guess I could move this over here, huh? Hopefully that's a little bit better. Thanks for saying something about that, Jeff Beeler. If you're on mobile, that might be the case too. I almost never watch this stuff on mobile. I do sometimes, but not very often. In any event, here we are, Gettysburg, July 1st to 3rd, 1863, from Worthington Publishing. Next up is Congress of Vienna from GMT. Now, this is by designer Frank Esparrago. I guess I'm now I'm just having fun with the poor man's name. But this is very interesting topically. This is about the Congress of Vienna, and therefore kind of about the whole. It's not really about the Congress of Vienna. It's kind of about the diplomatic situation in Europe toward the end of the Napoleonic Wars. One of the four-player positions in this thing is France. And I don't think that's just because Talleyrand was so good that he managed to get France dealt a seat at the table at the Congress of Vienna. The game begins well before the actual Congress of Vienna occurs. So on my recent Napoleonic kick, this has kind of become a important thing for me to get. I'm not sure how close it is. We'd have to check the GMT prospectus, and I did not do that in preparation for this show. But it is on pre-order. So hopefully half the picture can be seen. I could move it, but then I'd be putting it up here and it would be tiny and everybody would complain about it being tiny, right? And my head's not positioned in that to maximize that. Hold on. See if we can fix that a little bit. Yeah, I think we're going with this. This is going to have to do. All right, so Congress of Vienna from GMT. The graphics that I've seen look, like playtest graphics, which they are. So don't be appalled by them. They are not what the final graphics will look like. Now, this is a cousin, I believe, of the Great Statesman series, even if it's not. Ooh, we lost a nut on the counter clipper. Even if it's not, I'm not sure if it's part of the Great Statesman series or not. I think it is. And maybe it's not. I don't know, because Mark Herman and Jeff Engelstein are not involved. So, or really, that's a Mark Herman series, but Jeff Engelstein has contributed as co-designer of one of the 3 games in the series already. But this clearly is inspired by Churchill, especially. You'll see it immediately when you look at the board, and really by Pericles as well. Less so by Versailles 1919. Failure to route. What do you do with GMT box inserts? I almost always throw them in the garbage because they do not. Once the game is like assembled and ready to play, you can't fit that in the box usually, along with the insert. However, I have been known to occasionally cut it out in the same size as the interior of the box and set it in the bottom of the box if I thought it was particularly attractive or something like that. And yes, when I say put it in the garbage, I mean put it in the recycling because it is cardboard. Flat or game storage question, flat or bookcase style? I am a diehard bookcase style. And in many cases, but not all cases, if I have flat boxes, I will store them bookcase style, regardless of whether they're flat or not. For some games like Most Fearful Sacrifice, that doesn't make any sense. But for most games, I will store in bookcase format, and that works out great for me because most war games are in bookcase format. Perry Sparopoulos says he has several GBACW and GCACW and Blind Swords games are on the table. One thing, and you're right, they're highly playable, and that's the point. But I will say that don't be stuck on this idea that you got to play the advanced campaign scenarios for GCACW. You could get a lot of enjoyment out of very short scenarios, and you do not have to learn the advanced rules for And once you get the hang of GCACW, it plays very quickly, very smoothly, and it makes a lot of sense. And David Imperato says that GMT says that Congress of Vienna is part of the Great Statesman series, which makes sense. It's clearly where it belongs. I just not sure I remember that that was official. I have an absolutely batshit amount of cardboard in this house. I'm not keeping that cardboard. I'm not keeping the empty counter sprues either. Did I throw them away already? I did. Three most of four counter sprues from Black Wednesday are already in the recycling. And as Stigler points out, so you can get to me, like 3/4 of the play value in a GCACW game is not in the campaigns, unless you're just absolutely really want to play the Gettysburg Advanced campaign. But bear in mind, there's long scenarios in there, so you're not stuck with 2 and 3, just 2 and 3 turn scenarios. All those games have meaty scenarios all the way up and down the entire spectrum. As Stigler points out, there isn't really a way to do that without learning the advanced game in GBACW. It's pretty much all advanced game. There are some optional rules. As far as I recall, Stigler will correct me if I'm wrong. Ammo and fatigue are optional rules. I'm 100% sure it was the case with ammo. I would never play without that, and I would certainly never play without fatigue either. So well, Patty Rafesky, first of all, thanks for coming back. Yes, but on the top of the bookcase, which you cannot see in frame, there are flat box games. What do I got up there? Eclipse, Second Dawn, Stellar Horizons, and the GTS games, actually, or the 3 flat box GTS games that I've got anyway. So, I do it both ways because there's no way around that, but I prefer bookcase games because it's more efficient storage. It's pretty much that simple. This wall, these 2 bookcases behind me are one of 5 walls in which there are games, 6 walls on which there are games stored. One of which is the overflow wall, so eventually that stuff might actually go away. The rules are really, really quite crunchy for GBACW. I will agree with that. The rules for Line of Battle are simpler, but not that much simpler. But then Dean says, kind of learn the line of sight rules and then just play it by mutual agreement. Can I see you? Yes, you could see me. Okay, good enough. So there's some of that hand wavy stuff, and this is another one of those reasons why you don't see Dean Essig designs in tournaments, because this totally doesn't compute with tournament style players. John Longshore cannot imagine Stellar Horizons in a bookcase. Ken X or Ken 10 says that doesn't storing the games on end cause the maps and rules to deform if the box is not packed tight? I believe this to be theoretically possible. I have never actually observed it in practice, unless there's something wrong, like you have a full-size booklet or some papers or whatever in an Avalon Hill box, which is a little smaller than that, and things are kind of crunched in there. And I don't believe that's ever just the fact that it's stored on its side, right, or its bottom, as it were. Like I said, I've never actually seen that. Chad Kennedy loves the Line of Battle series. Can't wait for No Turning Back whenever it shows up, and that should be on pre-order at some point this year. Ravinas Albion asks if the GBACW system can be adapted into Napoleonics. So the game you cite here is kind of Berg's attempt to do that, to be honest. I think there's a huge inspiration. I mean, he's inspired by himself, I guess, right? But he's kind of adapting his previous work into Napoleonics, into Triumph and Glory and Borodino. And that's as far as that series went with GMT, although Triumph and Glory does contain, I think, 3 battles. But then Frederick Bay picked the torch up and adapted it further into the Jour de Gloire series. Now, that is a series published largely in French, many issues, many of the games, and there's a lot, appeared in the pages of Vivictus or in other French publications. If you're not in Europe, good luck finding any of that. But if you want to see the system, you can check out the. Somebody will correct me if I am wrong, but I believe the same issue of C3I that contained the Mark Herman Gettysburg game also contained the Jour de Gloire Battle of Issy. So that will give you, that's a nice small battle. That will give you a pretty good picture of that, at least a taste of that system. So moving on from Congress of Vienna, we have The Fate of All, recently announced by Thin Red Line Games and their very first non-modern hypothetical thing. They actually didn't say in the announcement that, unless I missed it, which is always possible, who the designer is, but that's probably Fabrizio. This should be out this year. Now, there's a link to the thing to pre-order this in the sort of. I'll explain that right now in the video description. But the way Thin Red Line does pre-orders is they say, hey, you can reserve a copy now. And you send an email to this email address, which is in the post that I've linked to down in the video description, and to reserve a copy. They don't take any money. They just put your name on a list. And then when the game becomes available, they send out an email that says, hey, it's available now. Go pay for it. Here's the link to do that. And you have some period of time, usually a couple of days, in which to get that done, after which pretty much it goes out the door. And when that period ends, whoever didn't pre-order it has a pretty narrow window of sometimes hours, sometimes minutes, and sometimes days, but not very often, if it's an original printing and not a reprint, to go order their remaining copies, which they don't print a lot of. So, my advice, if you're interested in this, this is Operational Ancients. This is so it's operational and tactical, but I keep calling it operational because I'm much more interested in the operational end of it, because we see a fair amount of traffic in Ancients Tactical. We don't see very much traffic at all in Ancients Operational. So to me, that is the more interesting component here. But you can play one and not the other. You can just use the regular battle resolution thing, determine who wins the battle instead of playing it on the little battle map. And this is from Thin Red Line Games. They do the whole DEF CON thing, which was very appropriate when they were doing Modern Hypothetical, but a little less appropriate now. But yeah, I'm real excited about this. There are pictures and graphics on there. Gimpy did a video on it already. I didn't want to do a whole video about it, just talking about, hey, this looks cool. I have done that, but I'm really very excited about this. But I wasn't so excited that at the mere pre-order stage, I needed to do a standalone video on it. Let me put it that way. But that should not mean that I am not excited about this, because I am very excited about this. I am very much looking forward to this, and hopefully it will be here this year. That would be great. That's what Fabrizio said. So John Longshore says he has SPI's The Conquerors. So this is explicitly inspired by SPI's The Conquerors, or at least half of SPI's The Conquerors, which I want to say was a Richard Berg design. I might be wrong about that. I do have. I thought I didn't have the S&T game, The Crusades, and as I was looking for stuff to clip for the show, because I'd finished Black Wednesday by then. I'm like, oh, I have this. That's great. I'm glad I didn't go buy one of these. So now there's also a series from the GMT called the Conquerors series, which I think was another take on the same idea, but I don't believe that got more than one, maybe two games off the ground, and that was Berg as well. So, and that's a fairly interesting looking game, actually. But this looks really nice. It looks really nice and looks extremely promising, and I'm very interested to see what Thin Red Line comes up with for this product. And if not, I will yell about it. World War II Commander Volume 2 Market Garden. This is John Butterfield game coming up from Compass Games, and I believe, and possibly we'll mention this in our conversation with John tomorrow night, but I believe this is coming reasonably soon. Now, this is the second in the series from Compass, but that game is based on John's video game, The Battle of the Bulge, which I believe, done through Shenandoah Studios as a tablet or iOS or whatever mobile device type of game. but which you can now get on Steam. Now I have that. I've played it. It's very good. It is an area movement game. It plays very quickly. If you want a market garden game that you can play in a couple of hours, this would be a great choice. And that's 1.5 to 3 hours is my playtime estimate on this. So I think this is a very promising looking game on a topic that I am personally highly, highly interested in. I don't have a better graphic for this fine product from our good friends at Decision Games, makers of fine conflict simulations. And nor is there a better title for it than Sicily. This is the Joe Youst Goss treatment of Sicily. It's likely to be 3 or 4 maps, maybe at a slightly different scale than we have seen from the Goss system so far. I am highly interested in this conflict, and the biggest game I have on the topic is OCS's Sicily Triumph and Folly. We did have as we talked about last week, we did have the Battle for Sicily. I think that was last week on pre-order from GMT, but that got dropped for whatever reason. GMT dropped it, and it might show up again, and I hope it does because it looks real promising. But in the meantime, this is probably going to be kind of the ultimate Sicily game, depending on when it comes out. Now, this is not the next Goss game in the pipeline. We will get to that shortly. And it is on another of my favorite topics. I will mention now, though, that there is a third Goss game available for pledge through Decision, which is Tunisia. Much less interested in that. If it comes out, I'll probably buy it, but I think this is true. Marty says that he thinks that the GMT Sicily game got dropped due to the designer's real-world obligations. That makes sense. The designer was active duty military at the time, and that is a completely logical conclusion to draw. I just don't have actual information that says that, and I don't really want to speculate if that's the case. So, Perfidious Albion says, how does Sicily Triumph and Folly, Triumph and Glory is the Napoleonic game from Berg, compare to Sicily 2? It is a matter of skill, both map scale and unit skill. And the game generally uses that opportunity to streamline some of the special rules as well. So the scale in Sicily Triumph and Folly is, I believe, 2.5 miles to the hex, whereas the scale in Sicily 2 is 3.5 miles to the hex, I believe, unless it's 5. I think it's 3.5. What that means is that Sicily 1, which is what I'm going to call it to avoid stumbling over it more, Sicily 1 is 2 maps, and Sicily 2 is 1 map. Now, that might not sound like a huge difference, but they rescaled the units as well. So, for example, all the American divisions are broken down into regiments or smaller with HQs, including like the Big Red One in Sicily 1, and they're just individual counters. Sicily 1 is pretty old at this point and includes a number of things that have fallen out of vogue in OCS design, like multi-unit formations that have their own HQs in addition to having their own organic trucks. I didn't object to that, so I don't. And I've played both Sicily 1 and Sicily 2, and I think they are different. They're quite a bit different. You get definitely a different experience playing one versus the other. Sicily 1 takes longer to play. It's twice as big, right? Sicily 2 is easier to play because there are not really fewer special rules, but it's been streamlined, so they're simpler special rules for the most part. And you've got a lower piece count, so that's always going to be a factor. Carl Fung, thanks for stopping by. Yeah, so I was right. Sicily 1 is 2.5, and Sicily 2 is 3.5. So 3.5 is the current West Front OCS map scale. That's the same scale as Beyond the Rhine that Cross Channel Attack will be on. And that I forget where Blitzkrieg Legend falls in that, but Carl may know. Nordic Maelstrom asks if Salerno 43 is any good. I think it is. I'm very interested in the Italian campaign in general. So, all right, there is a Marty says that MMP has an interesting 3-player CDG on Sicily in early development, and that is um, potentially interesting. You can easily split it the way that Jeff Anderson suggests, Patton, Monty, and the Axis. You could easily do that. That campaign splits 4 ways much less comfortably because then you hand somebody the Italians, and nobody wants to play the Italians in Sicily. Um, I have 1 or 2 CDGs from Multi-Man, and I have not played any of them. So jury's out on that as far as I'm concerned. Several of them do look good. So Kingdom of Heaven is the one that springs immediately to mind. Um, and Nordic Maelstrom asks, what World War II battler campaign do we want to see be made into a battalion combat system game? I'll let the chat answer that, and because Carl is here, maybe he can answer that. But there is a whole pile of BCS stuff in the pipeline. A couple of my more highly anticipated things are in there. That France 1940 game based around Saddam, that sounds very interesting. The Cobra game sounds very interesting. The Market Garden game would be a day one pre-order for me, that kind of thing. So at this point, whatever they want to do for BCS, I'm happy to buy it. So that's pretty much where I stand with BCS. But as Carl has explained at length elsewhere, um, not every battle is going to be a good match for BCS because of the idiosyncrasies of the system. Joseph Syverson asks if we will see a reprint of Kingdom of Heaven, and Carl says LOL. And I don't know if Carl is reacting to that comment or not, but I think it is an appropriate reaction. I think it is. I would be shocked if we saw a reprint of Kingdom of Heaven. It's not that Multi-Man never does reprints; they do every once in a while, but they seem to be extremely reluctant to do that. Luzon 41 to 42. Well, we will see that in OCS before too long. BCS Sicily. Ooh. Yeah, there's some maneuver in there. I think that's maybe there's some grinding combat in there too, but some grinding combat combined with some maneuver is actually okay. So, all right. So moving on from Goss Sicily, which we don't know a whole lot about yet, we get to Grand Havoc. Sorry for the terrible picture, but that's what I had. This is a Blind Swords series game from designer Steve Carey, on the Battle of Perrysville. So I have not pre-ordered it, but like I have done with every other Blind Sword series game, I will in fact get it. But it is still available at a pre-order price. I've heard good things about Shifting Sands at Holtzman, by the way. Okay, so Carl says that BCS Market Garden is on the to-do list after BCS France 1940, which, hey, I'll buy that too. Shut up and give me the games. Vitis Albion says, isn't Kingdom of Heaven basically the Crusades, which Berg covered twice? Yeah. But so what? How many games about the East Front do we have? I mean that's true, but I don't know. I'm not sure if that's what you're trying to say. It's like, don't we already have this game? It's a pretty different game than either of the two Berg games, which are themselves, despite sharing some ideas and DNA, are fairly different from one another. So Kingdom of Heaven is a CDG, but one of the two Berg treatments of this topic, Onward Christian Soldiers, is also a CDG. Despite that, Kingdom of Heaven is not all that similar to it. I do think that Onward Christian Soldiers is going to be better multiplayer. I'll tell you that. So there's that. So Carl, we're going to see OCS Luzon is going to be in a magazine whenever another issue of that comes along. I'm not sure that's going to be this year, but it could be. I'm getting um, a lot of I don't know. It could be along any time comments from the OCS folks that I talk to. So, and I do have a very high opinion of the blind. Back to Grand Havoc, I do have a very high opinion of the Blind Swords system. It is very good. It is easy to play, but not as easy to play as the Civil War Brigade battle series from Worthington. But it is easy to play. It's a lot easier to deal with than, say, GCACW or Line of Battle or the Civil War Brigade series for that matter. But it is regimental scale, rather than brigade scale. So bear that in mind. So that's why when they finally decided to do a big battle, Gettysburg, they changed it to the Black Swan system, which kind of rescales it halfway between. It's a little complicated, and I don't have the language to explain it. But the units are a regiment or two, maybe three, depending on regimental size. Wherein blind swords, they're just regiments. BCS folding gap. You know what? That I'm not sure I would buy. I have I have so many games on that Cold War goes hot, and my interest level, I have well over my interest level in games on that topic. Let me put it that way. Where I get nothing on here is Israeli Wars, except for October War, which looks tactical to me. John Stanley says it's the first for the CSA's Army of Tennessee. So there's that. You can't call it, there's a difference between Army of Tennessee and Army of the Tennessee. And I'm not going to get it wrong. So we are going to have a giveaway this evening. And it is going to be of the relatively recent game from War Diary magazine. This is out of my collection, not courtesy War Diary, but thank you, War Diary, for producing this fine game. This is a redux of the old classic Avalon Hill Guadalcanal by designer Mike Nagel. It is greatly updated and is a pretty nice looking game. So in order to enter to win, and the slates are wiped clean. If you've won a recent giveaway here on the channel, you are still eligible to win this. Hashtag Guadalcanal in the chat. I'll probably have this out by the end of the week. And again, if you are not in the US, I will probably ask you to split the shipping cost with me. And if you do win, you will email me with your info and I will get it over to you. And I will cover shipping, obviously, if you're in the US. So hashtag Guadalcanal to win the giveaway of Guadalcanal. I haven't decided whether we're going to have a giveaway next week or not, but we might. So bear that in mind. So I will let that stew for a little while. At some point, it has been suggested in a number of occasions that we should do a head-to-head-to-head. GBACW versus Line of Battle versus Blind Swords. And show with guests, sort of a champion for each of those systems. And I think it's a really cool idea. But if I do that, I would either want to get the designers of the systems, or I would want to get rabid fans of the systems. And I wouldn't want to mix and match, right? I'd either want all designers or all rabid fans. And I can run the designers down, but I'm having trouble finding a rabid fan who's not a designer from Blind Swords. And if you know of such person, send them my way, because I could set that up on pretty short notice. On the other hand, Stigler has screwed this up by becoming a designer, although I guess that's not technically true yet. I think that War Diary is printing through another. They're not printing through Blue Panther. Somebody told me, and Marty Sample probably knows who it is. They're printing on demand, so it kind of looks like a Blue Panther production, but it's somebody else. It's not Blue Panther. I don't know if it says that in here or not. It's a pretty nice looking game. I do have an unboxing video of this if you want to take a look at that. I sort of underplayed to what extent it is a revision of the original game. But it's not the same, but it is definitely a fresh take on the original classic Avalon Hill Guadalcanal that was released in the 60s at some point. If I'm not, Steve Carey is a designer though. So not that that's not fair. We might have to do it that way. I know a guy who might qualify for Line of Battle too, now that I think about it, who's also not a designer, but is involved. Marty has no idea who prints War Diary, and somebody knew because somebody told me. I can't smell shit right now, so to be honest, I have spent so much time in the yard amid the pollen that I can't smell shit. So that's just the way it is. Did I take my allergy medication this morning? I'm not sure that I did. That's a problem. So hashtag Guadalcanal, and we'll get back to the countdown after Grand Havoc. I have all of the existing sort of. I don't have The Devils to Pay, which is the first day at Gettysburg. That was released, I think, by Tiny Battle Publishing, and as opposed to Revolution Games, who has released all of the other Blind Swords games. Now, Tiny Battle Publishing is Mark Walker. Also, Flying Pig is Mark Walker. So probably run into Market Origins, for example, and Herman for that matter. People really picked up Blind Swords and ran with it, though. Steve Carey is one of several people with games in the pipeline in that system. And I'm not sure what the actual production system or schedule, how that works at Revolution Games. What I can tell you is that the amount of time between, hey, this game is available for pre-order, and oh, it's going out the door, is not usually very long. So we're not talking about a 10-year delay like we see out of certain of the publishers. And they were, so yes, but I think that's because of their affiliation with War Diary. I don't know that they are the printer of that. I'll be happy to be corrected on that. But you are right, they did have copies of it at Buckeye Game Fest. So Chosin Reservoir 1950 for BCS. Also not terribly into Korea stuff. But I'd probably buy that to support the system. I could talk to Hexy. That's a great idea. I've got Hexy's email address. We could. I've got to, if I'm going to be the one that's providing the impetus to set that up, then I have to get the impetus. You know what I'm saying? There's a lot going on. So at some point, I would love to do that, but it's never been a top priority. And we'll see. I will eventually happen, I predict. I'm going to last call on Guadalcanal here. Fancy giveaway. It is open, but it is unpunched, and I'm pretty sure none of the counters came out of the sheets. And if they did, that was an accident. So it's basically unpunched. There's a really, really mild smell in it, but it just smells like new game. It doesn't have that distinctive Blue Panther pong that everybody... Looking at CSW, looks like Lock and Load Prince War Diary. I don't think so. Certainly the print characteristics of War Diary do not resemble the print characteristics of Lock and Load Publishing stuff. And I know that wasn't what I was told. And it might be in the box. It might say who printed it in the book. I just don't have it. So last call on Guadalcanal. I'm going to push the button in about 60 seconds, and we have 90 entrants. Which is fantastic. So what's our 173 people here tonight so far? That is pretty fantastic. And we are maxing the night out here as it were. So I am about to hit the button. Let's see who wins this fine copy of Guadalcanal. John Nolan says that now Blue Panther games don't have the ammonia smell. I mean, people complained about it, and I even complained about it, but I was, I'm not. It's like you're not going to die, and the smell will eventually go away. Clark Commando 1983. Mark, welcome back to the show. Thanks for stopping by. So let's draw and see what we got. Marty says that William Aarons is the winner. William Aarons, please email me at ardwulflair@gmail.com. If I'm not being clear on that, it is in the ticker at the bottom. So congrats to William Aarons for winning Guadalcanal. Like I said, that assuming you get the info to me soon, there's no reason. It's probably not going out before Wednesday because of my personal work week logistics, where I spend 5 hours in the car on Wednesday. But it should go out by the end of the week. So congrats to William Aarons. And I don't remember if you're in Canada or not. So sorry about that. I thought you were in Canada. And if so, I'll have you split the shipping cost for me. Shipping through pirate ship. Usually I can get a decent price, decent being relative in this context. You know what I'm saying? All right. So moving on from Grand Havoc. Next up is Downfall, Conquest of the Third Reich. This is a Chad Jensen design, finished up by John Butterfield. And this looks very promising. Now, there's a couple of things going on with this. One, It starts, I believe, in 1943, as opposed to starting at the beginning of the war. It is the conquest of the Third Reich. Okay, so the writing's on the wall at this point. We have seen this before a couple of times. The thing that I have in my library that does the same thing is Ted Racer's Fall of the Third Reich, which do not look particularly similar, other than the obvious that they're on the same topic and pretty much the same time frame. Marty says this starts with the Stalingrad counteroffensive. Okay, so 42 then. This looks very good. This is the actual cover, which was announced or presented relatively recently by GMT. So this uses the Battle for Germany mechanism, in which one player plays the Western Allies and the Germans facing the Soviets, and the other player plays the Soviets and the Germans facing the Western Allies. I'm very curious to see what Chad came up with for this. So I the credit is designed by Chad Jensen and John Butterfield. I am not sure where John picked up the process, so um, I'll I think we might have talked about it in our interview, either with Kai or with John. So I'd have to refresh my memory on that. Scale is army level, so it's quite low counter density. Core level in Ted's Fall of the Third Reich, which also I haven't played, which is pretty interesting looking actually, and I've heard very good things about it. And it is now out of print over at Compass Games. Ted's game definitely starts in July 1943. I can vouch for that, because I think when I got it, we were playing Second Front. So BCS Kalak is the East Front game that Carl is talking about that is coming. That looks, it's not a topic I know necessarily a lot about going in, but it looks very interesting. And BCS is at this point, unless they produce a game on a topic that actively disinterests me, like the Folded Gap Modern would, I will buy whatever they do. So if you haven't seen the Downfall clip about Total War, which is hard to find, because if you search for Downfall Total War, you'll get 700 hits, and the one you're looking for will be like number 706. But it's hilarious. If you're in on the jokes, it's hilarious. So Downfall coming out from GMT. This is very far along. It should be out in the next few months. So by Swords and Bayonets by our good friend Stigler is on this list. This is Great Battles of the American Civil War. It is a multi-pack of a number of smaller battles. This is as close as you are going to get to an introductory game in that series. That said, there are, in most of the games in the series, there are smaller battles. But this is all, oh, I haven't seen the PressCon one. I probably should watch that. But this looks super promising, and GBACW is another one where it's like, yeah, whatever, I'll buy it. Shut up, take my money. So it has hit its number over at GMT, despite the protestations of Stigler. So it's a great system. It is, as we have already discussed, it is at the high, I don't want to say highest complexity Civil War tactical game at this scale, but it might be. It is definitely near the top end, and I can think of nothing off the top of my head that necessarily compares in terms of complexity to it. But it all hangs together really well, and once you do learn it, it plays reasonably smoothly. And we had a great time with it. So I'm happy to, and it will solo well, as Meandering Mike implies here. Because this is a chip pull system at this point, it will solo very well. So, and Stigler will be delighted for you to solitaire it. I am positive. So, moving on. Norman Conquests from GMT. This is the Men of Iron Series Volume 5. This was one of those where I was like, Man, I really like this series because I had just played a couple of battles out of the tri-pack, and then Richard Berg passes away, and I'm like, well, are we going to get any more of these? And I'm happy to report that we are. This is from designer Ralph Shelton. This is the conflicts of the Normans and their successors. And if you don't know, the Normans were kind of all over the place. Off the top of my head, this contains battles in, of the, I think it has Hastings in it actually. And it has some battles in Sicily as well. Oh, Marty has sent me the video, which I could probably play, but I don't want to get demonetized. So I'm not gonna. I'll play it after the show. I really like this series. So this is another kind of Berg. The series Men of Iron is medieval battles. The tri-pack, which there's a reprint coming of, is a marvelous value. After the first three volumes, there's a fourth volume, Arquebus, which is the Italian Wars. And then we have this guy, number 5, Norman Conquests. This looks like it's doing very well, as Perfidious Albion says. Auto pre-order. I may do real time counter clipping on for Swords and Bayonets. Just FYI, I'm gonna probably do that. Put the link in the chat. Hold on, let me pull it up. I don't have Discord open. That's the problem. Here we go. Here we go. All right, I'll put it in here. Boom. Piss, that didn't work. Okay, let's see if this works. There we go. That's probably hilarious. So feel free, and if you skipped away to watch it, I won't blame you much. So if you're departing from this spellbinding content right here. But Norman Conquest, very excited about this. Happy to see this series continuing. Like a lot of the Berg stuff, I think he's had a lot of series in the pipeline. He's extremely prolific designer, and a lot of his stuff is stuff I really like. And I'd really like to see people pick up the torch and carry on with this system among other systems. Triumph and Glory is covered, right? GBACW is covered. I'd like to see the Ancient World and this continued as well. Now, on to Richmond 2 is in fact shipping now. Peter Sheaf. That's how I'd pronounce that anyway. But feel free to correct me. So this is another example, though. This series is kind of Berg mining his own design work, right? Or I should say, continuing to leverage design work that he had already done, because there's a lot of inspiration to be found for Men of Iron in previous Berg works that were either Berg himself or Berg with Mark Herman with Great Battles of History. Nevertheless, this is a considerably easier to game system to play than GBOH, and I think quite a lot easier than GBACW as well. So there's plenty of medieval stuff that you could do games on. That's not really a problem. Although we've got a pretty good spread as it is. I mean, you could do another whole volume of Wars of the Roses, for example. So there's a lot of potential there. You could do another whole volume of Crusades battles as well, for that matter. I have not gotten a note, at least as of when I set the stream up. I have not gotten a shipping notice, but I don't necessarily expect to until minimally later this week. Because, like I said, I ordered it about a month after it went on pre-order. On to Richmond too. So my bad, my fault. All right, next up is Order and Opportunity. This is a VPJ Arponen game of modern power politics. This is not normally my thing, but this looks pretty cool. So I am watching this guy very closely over at GMT. Don't have an actual, none of the graphics on this are real yet. So once again, don't get upset about, oh my god, it's hideous. And then you're like, we're like 3 years away from making a map here, buddy. Calm down. Lighten up, Francis. So Stigler says he has mixed fortunes with Men of Iron so far. Balance issues. That's pretty typical Berg right there, to be completely honest. But he'll tell you in the scenarios which way it's balanced too. So also the case with GBACW, not so much, because those did tend to be more balanced battles. Some of the Great Battles of History scenarios are total blowouts. So there's that. So I don't have a lot to say about Order and Opportunity so far, but it's very intriguing looking. By the way, anything that's like not technically pre-orderable yet is also not on this list. So Thunderbolt, for example, which is a day one pre-order for me, is not on this list. But I will continue to mention it and how much I am looking forward to it. So, all right, next up is Operation Crusader. This is one of two reprints, but they are substantial redesigns in this list. Now, the original Operation Crusader, I was aware of this game and hadn't really given it anything resembling a look until like the last 2 years, maybe. This is a GDW release from the mid to late 70s, as I recall. And what I didn't realize at the time, and this shouldn't surprise anybody because it's not like GDW was allergic to big games, but this original is a huge game. Now, I do think that this version will pare that back somewhat and will streamline a number of the other rules. But nevertheless, I think Frank Chadwick is, of course, a designer that it is worth paying attention to say the least. I think that is an possibly understatement of the show. So, Frank's got a lot going on too, so bear that in mind. Do I have any actual? Need a larger baggie for these. There we go. This is perfect. Larger baggie for the Italians. I'm actually considering making a little 3D printed stand that the baggie can sit into with a little funnel, and then I can just dump directly into the funnel from the funnel trays. That'll be fantastic if I do that. I am not micromanaging the sort of these counters at this time. That will happen after it gets to the table and we play it. So I think I'm done clipping for the evening right around 9:30, so that's pretty good. Um, GDW did a lot of really important and noteworthy games, and this is one that just kind of vanished in my visibility for a long time. It does have plotted simultaneous movement, and a lot of people are going to bounce off that, frankly. This is an updated reprint, but it's like I said, it's a substantial redesign, so don't necessarily expect based on what you're hearing out of me, that it's going to necessarily be identical to the Joe. You could just come pick one up once I design that thing, which I have not yet done. So they're different sizes baggies, so it's a little hard to predict how that's going to work out. But I'm considering it. Any good suggestions for French Foreign Legion games, especially Algeria? So there's a few games on Algeria, and there is at least one S&T game on the French Foreign Legion specifically. So you might check that out. If you search for French Foreign Legion on BGG, you should see something. You're not going to find a lot, though, other than like, here's a counter for the French Foreign Legion in my World War II game, that kind of thing. That you might see. Nordic Maelstrom says, never had a bad time gaming with Frank. Frank is a super amiable guy. I have met him in person once years ago at an Origins. I think mostly what I talked to him about was A, Traveler, which Traveler of the New Era was a big release at the time and had just won an Origins award. And B, Joseph Mengele, to whom I am, in fact, not related. So there's that. Yes, I get that question a fair amount. No relation. Compass could convince. I really feel like the Baseline Smash actually looks interesting, and I feel like the cover, and in fact that entire era of GDW war game covers, I think did those games no favors. They looked really weird. They were really idiosyncratically GDW of the era, and I don't think it's a great title either. It doesn't tell you Baseline Smash. What's it about? You don't know from that title. And I think that's unfortunate. Operation Crusader, you know what it's about. It's about Operation Crusader. In any event, this Operation Crusader game is definitely on my radar. It's definitely something I'm going to take a very close look at. Uquinto did do an album game on the French Foreign Legion. That's true. I had forgotten about that. Carl says that Phaseline Smash just needs a map redesign. The counters look fine. The counters are actually fine. Generally speaking, I think GDW was doing a pretty good job on counters, and their maps were a little less consistent. And the ugliness I am referring to is actually the box, not the map or counters. No Question of Surrender is Free French and the French Foreign Legion in North Africa. I'm not sure I knew that because I don't have No Question of Surrender. And a lot of these GDW games you can get relatively inexpensively. Now, there are other Frank Chadwick things in the pipeline over at Compass, including the 1940, 41, 42 tri-pack of the 3 Series 120 games. That's a reprint, more or less straight reprint as far as I could tell, so I didn't include it in this list, but it looks very interesting and like a very good value. Let me put it that way. The Series 120 games are all they were designed to be super digestible and playable in 120 minutes or less. Right? That was the idea. So, and we got another mention here from Christopher Smith about No Question of Surrender. Quite sure I did. Christopher, is that you in front of the Acropolis in Athens or the Acropolis in Nashville? I'm curious because there's a very similar picture of me in front of the Acropolis in Nashville. So there is a one-to-one replication of the Acropolis in Nashville, Tennessee. I'm not going to explain it. There's a reason. If you go there, not I think their tickets are like $5 or something like that when I went. So it's pretty inexpensive and it's pretty cool. And it's there, so it's pretty cool. So have that. Anyway, moving right along, we have the Rock of Chickamauga. Of course, George Thomas is the Rock of Chickamauga. And this is Herman Luttman's new Black Swan game coming for, and you can pre-order this now. Again, I've put links to all the pre-order pages in the video descriptions. A couple of them were hard to find. This one, not so much. But this is very exciting. So the Black Swan system, a derivative of blind swords, which basically it's a slight rescale and it changes the chits out for cards and they play like cards anyway, so it feels very natural to just do that. This is going to be another big box big map game. It's a huge battle. This is the Battle of Chickamauga, obviously. And it is, which is a fascinating battle. I'm not sure. I'm willing to be argued with on this, but I don't believe that a Civil War army ever came as close to being destroyed on the field as the Union Army under General Rosecrans did at Chickamauga. And that is why we call George Thomas the Rock. One of the reasons why we call George Thomas the Rock of Chickamauga, because he prevented that. The Union Army was basically routing at that point. And Rosecrans himself had just like run off shit in his pants. So Perfidious Albion. I don't recall what the map looks like off the top of my head. I doubt it's the ugliest map I've ever seen. You may see a video on one of the damn ugliest maps I've ever seen relatively soon if things happen. But we will see. Strelnikov mentions that Tonkin, which I had also forgotten about, and Dien Bien Phu, which also makes sense, have the Foreign Legion there. So that makes sense. The Foreign Legion was at Dien Bien Phu, and of course, there's multiple games on that. Tonkin, I don't know very much about. So great quick take on Chickamauga. Rosecrans running off, clutching his ass because he just pooped his pants. So basically, he was never the same afterwards. He was very clever in a number of places and just was beside himself and just didn't know how to handle it. And some orders got garbled. A gap got opened in the Union line. Now you'll recall that the Confederate commander here is Braxton Bragg. Not exactly the sharpest knife in the Confederate silverware drawer. However, he had been lent Longstreet, and Longstreet knew what to do and exploited that gap and basically broke the entire Union line open. So Shiloh was a very close run but day 2 is completely different. Shiloh comes out at the end as at least a draw, and creditably a Union victory. Chickamauga is an outright Union loss. So again, this was not the intention. There were orders that got garbled somewhere along the lines. So Baseline Smash, somewhat reminiscent of the Conflict Games Barlev map. I'm not sure I can think of the Conflict Games Barlev map off the top of my head because I've never seen the Conflict Games version. I have seen the GDW version and I have seen the Compass version, which is very nice. That is also a significant redesign of the previous edition of Barlev, however. So moving on from the Rock of Chickamauga, definitely one of the most highly anticipated games of the year. Not games of the year, but games that are on pre-order right now by a lot of people. Hmm. Eric Schaefer says that Dave Powell's Maps of Chickamauga is very good. If you want to read books about Chickamauga, Dave Powell has, I believe, 2 or 3 volumes plus the book of maps on the Chickamauga campaign. Highly recommended. They are excellent. They are highly readable, outstanding books. So you should absolutely check that out. So Carl says that do not look at the Conflict Games Bar-Lev map directly or you'll go blind like looking at a solar eclipse. Now, I'm curious about these hideous maps now. So moving on, Goose Green. This is Tactical Combat Series. And yes, this is Doug's fault. I had been kind of meaning to order this, and Doug's videos now, he's got 2 of them out, did kind of push me over that edge. Now, the other thing is that so this is Falklands War. This is the first major land engagement of the Falklands War in 1983 between the UK and Argentina. It's a fairly close contest historically. Falklands War is, I don't have anything on the Falklands War, and it's one of these modern conflicts that I don't have a ton of interest in. However, this is going to be a great introductory point for TCS, the Tactical Combat Series. It is half a counter, it's one map and half a counter sheet. And most of the fighting takes place over this narrow isthmus, like on one of the 2 of the big Falkland Islands. So there's another one where the extent of my knowledge about the historical events is that I read the Wikipedia article, and that's pretty much it. Another really great selling point for this is the pre-order price is $24. And as Doug pointed out, you might not be able to find a pizza for $24 anymore. So if you want to try this system out, it is a very interesting system with a lot going for it, but which has, in the course of its fairly long life, taken a number of missteps in picking battles that maybe are not optimized to show off the system at its best. Omaha is the obvious example, but there are other examples as well. And of course, I have a copy of Omaha coming. So, and as well as 3 other, I have on the way or have made arrangements to pick up at Origins, I think 5 total TCS games. So that'll give me about 6 of them. I'm not buying them all. I think the only other ones I really want is probably Screaming Eagles, and which is a Market Garden situation, and GD 40 and 41. And I think I'm going to pretty much be good at that point, I think. And of course, I had a couple of them and got rid of them like a dummy. So there's that. There are some games on the Falklands War. Kevin Bertram points out that where there is Discord, not sure I knew that was a solitaire game, actually, because I haven't really investigated it other than to say every time I see a picture of it on the table, wow, that's a great looking map, because it is a great looking map. It's got great looking pieces. And you should be able to find this for, I might be full of shit. I don't know. I think you can find this for a reasonable price on the secondary market. I don't believe it's in print anymore. I could be wrong about that. So Carl says that Goose Green is a straight up 1 infantry battalion versus 1 infantry battalion. There's only 1 op sheet each. That's okay. That's great. It's real small. Like I said, so I'll show you there's going to be 1 more of these trays. This is Black Wednesday. Black Wednesday is basically 4, not exactly, but it's basically 4 counter sheets. So to organize it the way I like to organize stuff, I needed 7, markers included, 7 of these trays that store them quite densely. You'll be able to get Goose Green in like 6 baggies, at maybe 7 baggies at most. So Kevin says you play where there is Discord as the UK, which does make sense. Although it might be more interesting to play as the Argentines, actually, thinking about that. That was not necessarily a total wash. Well, I mean, it was contested at first. Let me put it that way. Again, I'm not an expert on the Falklands conflict, but there are some, this is a tactical system, right? It is a platoon level system. So, and I guess Doug said something very similar. I'm gonna say this too. So MMP a couple of years ago kind of retired a number of the gamers systems and I don't know why necessarily, but I can speculate that maybe the Civil War Brigade series had been deemed to have been exhausted because there's like 20 games in that series. They had covered a lot, including a lot of lesser known battles, including all the big ones. And I think the interest had kind of migrated over to what was once the regimental subseries and which then evolved into line of battle. So I think the sense was that Civil War Brigade series was just kind of over. And they had done everything that they really wanted to do in it. The Napoleonic Brigade series was another one that never seemed to really have taken off. There were 4 games that they produced, and I think there was a print and play 5th game and maybe a print and play 6th game that were very small. I've got Marengo that eventually needs to get to the table. GTS versus TCS are extremely different. Yeah, absolutely. The other nice thing is that with some exceptions, you can get out of print TCS games very inexpensively. If you are interested in doing that, go watch Doug's first TCS video because he basically runs through the entire series. I don't think he covers quite every game, but he covers most of them. And he'll tell you which ones are better and which ones are not as good because the situations they simulate do not necessarily model ideally to show off the strengths of TCS. There are some that do, and there are some that don't. Again, Omaha being maybe the most egregious example of a situation that really just doesn't play particularly well. Although I intend to do some solitaire stuff with it. So, and there's also been a lot of variation over the lifetime of that series, which again is a very old series. Um, and there's Mrs. Thatcher's Ward, Carl. Good call. And that's pretty recent from White Dog, I think. Some let me know if that's wrong or correct. I think it's White Dog. Um, Perry Spiropoulos says Ariete and Liros. Now, so getting back to the MMP and TCS story, apparently it was considered dropping TCS as well, but it was decided that they were going to try to do it to kind of translate it into a series of smaller zip-locked games. Okay. Now, in principle, if this is what it takes to get this series to survive, I'm all for it. But I do think that if somebody was to say do GD43, I think that would be a big seller for MMP and would make its pre-ordered number with no problem. So in the wake of that, they did Ariete, which is Italians in North Africa. It's the Ariete Italian division in North Africa, and this is maybe the best Italian division of the whole war. So it's a good contest, but it's in the desert. There's not that much terrain. I'm not the world's biggest desert guy, so I actually don't. There's an unboxing video that I did, a buddy unboxing, but I don't actually have that. I might pick it up when it's on sale now that we're doing TCS again. I owned at one point, I think, 4 TCS games and sold all of them, or I don't know if I sold them, but unloaded in some way, all of them except for Black Wednesday, which is the Spanish Blue Division getting dismembered by the Soviets. They put up an excellent fight and equally dismember several Soviet divisions of comparable size, or well, they're not comparably sized, but several Soviet divisions are broken by this offensive. But the Spanish Blue Division is never the same after that. They get pulled out not too long after that, too, by Allied pressure on the Spanish. Some of the Spaniards decide to stay and keep fighting, and they get folded into other units. So Doug is the tabletop's edge. That is correct. That is correct. An awesome channel for playthrough content, by the way. But he also does the occasional like commentary or analysis video. So, and he's done 2 of those in the Black Wednesday is on the desk. I'm not sure you can see it, but the box cover of Black Wednesday. This is the rest of Black Wednesday. The last counter tray to hold markers is on the printer right now. So that's what the holdup is on that. And then we'll be done with that. We can move on to something else. So en route are Omaha, Matanikaw, GD42, which is still available from MMP, by the way. It's just they don't have boxes anymore. It's in a Ziploc. which is a big, substantial game, and which is one that Doug highly recommends. And it is up to the modern graphical standards of this series, which a lot of the older games are not. The counters in Black Wednesday, I'm basically completely fine with. The map is one of those old kind of wah gamers maps that I'm not really a big fan of the color palette that has been employed there. Christopher Smith says that VUCA is working on a Falklands game. That might be very interesting. But I am probably unless Mrs. Thatcher's War is something I would consider. But and Swankiest Nerd, welcome to the stream, says he likes Objective Schmidt. He, she, they, I don't know. Likes Objective Schmidt, which is one of the very early games in the series. There is a modern hypothetical game in the series called Fourth Eagles War. That is the only game that you cannot play with the current rules. So, as usual, recommended to play with the current rules with gamers stuff. Carl says that the Knowledge Company, we're clipping. You can't see it because Goose Green is blocking it right now, but we're actually clipping one of their games tonight, Balkan Fury. I didn't know that they're doing something on the Falklands. I am very interested in the computer game version of the second world, their whole thing. Matt Taylor, is Europa Case White any good or worth picking up for $30? So it was originally there's three versions of Case White, and then there's the GRD revision of Case White called First to Fight. So let me say first that the Polish campaign of 1939 is a considerably more interesting and rich campaign than a lot of people expect it to be if you choose the right scale for it. That said, Europa is not that scale. So no, my opinion of it is not that great. Now, it was originally kind of intended as an introductory version of or introductory game to Europa. I don't think it's all that good at that. I think that Marita Mercur or Balkan Front, both of which you could in principle find for a price like this, are better introductions. Narvik is another one that it makes substantial modifications to the Europa system and is also therefore not a good introduction to Europa, although on its own, it's a pretty good game. So that said, $30 is a pretty good price. So if you want to tinker with it, I can't argue with $30. I've got the GRD revision First to Fight, so I'm satisfied with that. And as I recall, that has multiple different treatments of that campaign. So moving on from Goose Green, you know what? A lot of people, those folks who are like, because this is the exact position I was in. Was like, well, I've tried BCS a couple of times now, and I'm just not sure it's working for me. Watch Doug's BCS playthrough. Watch like 2 or 3 episodes. They're fairly long. Bear that in mind of his playthrough of the last Blitzkrieg, and that really helped me get it. Not so much mechanically, but in terms of thinking in the terms that BCS wants you to think in. I found those videos extremely helpful. His whiff videos are also awesome. And everything that Doug has done has pretty much been top notch. So highly recommended. If you're not subscribed over there, you should be doing that. Market Garden. Now we do have a little more information on this one. This is the game is going to be called Over the Rhine. This is Joe Youst Goss design on Operation Market Garden. The maps are done. It is available for pre-order over at Decision Games, purveyors of the finest website and wargaming as well. I'm all over this. I will be happy to buy. I don't know that I am just automatically going to buy every Goss game that comes out, but I'm buying this and I'll buy Sicily without any hesitation whatsoever. TCS Canadian Crucible is the most recent game in the series before Ariete, but there's a big gap there, and it also goes for decent change. I'm typically seeing it somewhere in the $75 to $125 range, which is more than I'm willing to pay for it. But it is an interesting topic to me. It's like June 9th, 7th, 8th, 9th, something like that, just after D-Day. The Canadians fighting at Nori. It looks pretty cool. And it is also up to the modern TCS graphical standard, unlike, again, older games in the series. So, I should check this. I should check the war zone. actually. Ooh, I should go check that stuff. So Jeff Miller says Goose Green is interesting in the contrasting styles of H. Jones, that's the dude that got himself killed, and his successor Chris Keeble, rigid versus flexible, also potentially interesting. And it's fairly long, right? I think the battle lasts like most of a day or a day and a half or something like that. So yeah, I'm up for Goose Green. Why not? It's $24, right? I can't hardly eat dinner for $24. Goss Market Garden, again, designed by Joe Youst. The maps are gorgeous. I will say that the more recent Goss maps that Joe has done are a little easier to play on than the early Goss maps. In, for example, Vakdam Rhine, there are some real challenges playing on those maps. We blew them up, and there's still really hairy, thorny patches of trails and stuff on those maps. This is going to be less of a problem due to the nature of the terrain for Market Garden. Another interesting thing about this is it's going to cover the shoulders of Market Garden as well, which most Market Garden games do not. Holland 44 does. Quite sure that It Never Snows does not. So, Jeff Beeler got it in Ziploc. I'd rather have it in a box. I'll take it in a Ziploc if I'm that into the game. My eyes are open. It's now on my wish list. Eating Crucible. And yeah, that's another one besides the GD40 and GD41 that I still want, and Screaming Eagles probably. So, and I'm picking up a Frozen Hell from Enterprise Games at Origins. So that is due. Sunray is down. Carl says that is reflected in the rules. And Carl, this is your design, is it not? Yes. Okay. So we've got the actual designer of Goose Green here. So I do think, if I didn't say this, and I think I did, I do think that there's some really interesting features of TCS that deserve continued attention, preferably with really well chosen topics that highlight the strengths of TCS. There's been a lot of rules evolution over the course of the series history, as again Doug goes through, and it's a series that I would just as soon see continued support for. So, Carl, feel free to pass that along to the people running MMP, that YouTube is mobilized in support of TCS, and we want GD43. We also want Goss Market Garden. I'll be happy to buy that, even though it's going to be expensive. I would not expect that. I think that's a 2024 release. Let me put it that way. All right. This is our one debatable whether it's a war game or not. I'm not sure if Ted has gone on record of saying that it's not a war game, but he has gone on record to say that it's a role-playing game. And I don't believe that Ted is correct using my definition of role-playing game, which I'm sure is different from Ted's. But there are definitely role-playing elements here. You play as Napoleon, working your way through Napoleon's career. This looks really very interesting. And I am going to be delighted when this thing comes out. And I'm pretty confident this has made its number already. Ted's a great designer. I think Ted's got an extremely good track record, certainly with World War One. That I think he's best known for nowadays based on the strength of Past Glory. But Ted's done good work all over the place, including World War II. So TCS Vietnam War. Of course, Carl, you mean the entire Vietnam War at the platoon level, right? That's gonna be the story until you correct me. So that's hopefully motivate you to correct me. So we're pretty close on time here. So I'm pretty excited about I Napoleon. This is a very interesting looking game. Of course, I don't have. The hell am I on this damn list? Oh yeah, we got several more to go. So I better speed up here. All right, so I Napoleon from Ted Racer and GMT. This looks great. Next up is Napoleon's End from Kevin Zucker and OSG. This is volume 3 and last in the campaign in France, 1814. This is well past the brilliant campaign of the early part of this campaign in France, which is simulated by Napoleon at Bay, and in La Patrie en Danger, first of these three that got released. The other one's out, which is Napoleon Retreats, I think, is the other one. Marty, we're getting to it. We're getting to it. So so 5 smaller battles like Semper Fi. Oh, this is fine. I could deal with this. Yeah, Drang, Operation Pegasus, Hamburger Hill, and 2 more battles. Some of the best known tactical engagements of the entire conflict. So I'll be happy to patronize that. And I'm not Mr. Big Vietnam tactical guy either. But where I am with TCS right now, which is I still haven't played it, but I really want to. I would, if this came up for pre-order right now, I would pre-order. So that'd be pretty cool. And in any case, Napoleon's End from OSG. This is the library of Napoleonic battles. It's kind of grand tactical treatment of these battles. I'm good for all of these. They do one of these a year. I really want my Dresden game, Kevin. But other than that, they're trucking along with these. He's got a number of other volumes in the works at various stages at the moment, anyway. And we'll probably see reprints of some of the out of print ones as well. So this gets a high recommendation from me for a number of reasons that I've talked about at length in the past. Next up is The Last Gamble. This is a rename of a previous game from 3W. I think it was 3W was the original. And then there was a Japanese version of Hitler's Last Gamble. I'm not going to be coy about the name because if I say it, but you can understand why they changed the name, because they're going to have trouble putting it on social media, because if you mention that name, like Facebook will just knock the post out. The Facebook robots will just knock the post out. So this is a substantial redesign by Danny Parker. If you want to hear more, and it should be going to the printer anytime. So if you'd like to hear more about that, then you should definitely tune in to our Wargaming the Ardennes special tomorrow night at 8 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time with Danny Parker and John Butterfield. Marty says that the original had Dean Essig's first map. Now I definitely want to take a look at that. I didn't know that, or I had forgotten that. One of the other two. Danny knows his stuff when it comes to this topic, right? So the original Battles for the Ardennes quad from SPI made an effort to go run it down, which we're over here. And it's considered by many to be the definitive game on the topic. It is an overused cover photo. I'll can't argue with that. We've seen it a lot. So Napoleon's End is on pre-order right now, 30% off. Pre-order release date is 2/24. I still haven't ordered it, but I'm going to order it basically as soon as the money frees up after Origins. Tomorrow night. The show with Dan is on Thursday night. The show tomorrow is a special thing. So special things are going to be on Tuesdays from now on. It used to be on Thursdays or Sundays. And the show with Dan, this at least gives me a break after Monday, after this stream, and me talking for 2.5 hours. Maybe more than that tonight. At least gives me the Tuesday off some of the time, right? So that's a plus. Surpassed only by the German guy throwing the potato masher. That's true. We've seen. I mean, that photo has been also a staged propaganda photo, by the way. That photo has also been overused. There's no doubt about that. I'm not blaming Roger for that, of course, because he was the first person to use it in wargaming, as far as I'm aware. Next up is Winter's Victory. This is a Mark Hinkle design. Mark Hinkle is basically New England Simulations, which is where this is coming from. Now, this ought to be released in, Marty will tell me when, I believe the release projection on this was July. This is the Battle of Eylau at a battalion scale using a modified version of the Wellington's Victory game system. This looks, Mark Hodgkinson, thanks for stopping by. I very seldom do I bail before 10 p.m. and we're going to probably go 5 or so minutes over here tonight. But Winter's Victory looks fabulous, looks absolutely fabulous. And every game from New England Simulations kind of has this sort of hand done feel. That's why they only do a game every few years. Marty says that the maps counters and boxes are done and in the warehouse. Final rules edits are being worked on. He would guess a mid-August release. Okay, that's later than I had hoped, to be completely honest about it. But yes, this is a pre-order. So it is still available for pre-order. Marty just collated all 800 deluxe component bags. Deluxe component? What's a deluxe component bag? Are these the tiny baggies that ship with the game? Are they deluxe? What makes them deluxe? Are they just tiny baggies? Um, are there pre-order bonus items? I pre-ordered. I didn't know that. Marty, what are the pre-order bonus items? Now I want to know because I pre-ordered and I'm all excited now. Metal wind gauge and special what? This is literally the first I'm hearing. I didn't know anything about this. This was not a selling point for me at all. Wooden turn cylinders, metal wind direction arrows, colored dice, and a like Jesus, Marty, this is fancy. This is like Euro fancy right here. This is like Klaus Teuber fancy. Jeez. Only for direct orders. Well, I ordered it direct, or you can't pre-order it from anybody else, right? In any event, it looks great. Really, really super into Napoleonic stuff right now. No idea where I'm going to put this on the shelf because that shelf is full. But I'll figure it out. It'll be fine. But it looks fantastic. It looks extremely promising. And I think the Wellington's victory system is very interesting. So we're going to get a fresh take on that as well. Hubris. I always used to pronounce this hubri, but then again, I had never heard the word spoken aloud prior to that. So there was that. This is a game about the wars of Alexander's successors by designer Morgan Guyon-Reti, French designer, designer of Pendragon, which is one of the two, sometimes three games that I consider my favorite coin games. I really like Pendragon a lot. This is a point-to-point card-driven. I think it's card-driven. It's definitely point-to-point. Highly promising looking game. It is on P500 over at GMT right now. Is that the last one? No. The last one is Crimea, Conquest and Liberation. This is an operational combat series game, and it is the only one of it. Thank you, Marty. That is on pre-order right now, but we are probably, I'm told, going to see at least one more pre-order up for pre-order this year from MMP. That's going to be either Forgotten Battles or another Operational Matters with the Luzon game in it. It might be both. We don't know. Whatever. Just this is another shut up and take my money type of situation. So this is kind of two games in one. So the Germans invade the Crimea in late 1941 and eventually take it over. It's the siege of Sevastopol and all that stuff. And then there is the later Soviet drive to reconquer the Crimea in 43. 43 sounds, maybe early 44 sounds correct. So we basically had two games that were kind of in the pipeline here. One from Guy Wilde dealing with the 41 to 42 situation, and then one from Tony Burkett that would link up with the Third Winter. This map dangles directly off the bottom of the Third Winter map and adds an additional dimension to the Third Winter as a campaign. So you're getting both in this box. And I've played Third Winter, which I love. I think is fantastic. And I've actually was in the early playtest for the 41-42 stuff, and this is very good. So I'm happy with this. It's one map. It's going to be a fairly easy to play OCS game. So if you want to combine it with Third Winter, great. If you don't, you've got a pretty good standalone game, a pretty good introductory OCS game because of the small footprint. Carl Crater from the War Game Bootcamp, thanks for stopping by. We're going to be done in just a couple of minutes here. And because of the small footprint, it's going to be digestible and it's not terribly, terribly expensive. And you're going to get plenty of play value out of this, in my opinion. So, and that's it. Crimea, Conquest and Liberation. So these are 25 things that I either have pre-ordered or damn well got to pre-order before too long. So very promising games. Hopefully this helps other people with some information about these things. There are links to all of the games I've discussed, at least that I had pictures of, not the stuff that was randomly mentioned, in the video description on YouTube. If you're watching this somewhere else, you might not see that, but because it's complicated updating it in all 4 places, and I didn't do that. So I would like to thank everybody for stopping by tonight. We have had a great time. We will be back next Monday at the usual time with a new topic for the next counter clipping show. Don't forget to tune in, particularly if you're interested in Last Gamble, to tomorrow's special 8 p.m. show with Danny Parker and John Butterfield on the Ardennes, and I'm sure we'll talk about Last Gamble extensively. We have the new relaunched show, whatever you want to call it, with Dan on Thursday with a guest that I'm hoping pans out, which will be something else if it does. And I don't want to be coy. It's not that I want to be coy. I just don't know if it's going to pan out or not, because it's a Dan outside the box style guest. Let me put it that way. So thanks everybody for coming. If you don't forget to thumbs up the video. If you have not subscribed to the channel already, please do so. Please click the little bell icon to get notified when new content comes out. And if you'd like to help support the channel, it really helps to become. There's other ways to support the channel. There's cool T-shirts and mugs and all that stuff, but the Patreon patrons help immensely. So I would like to give them a special shout out, which you will see in a minute over the closing credits. Everybody have a great time, and we will see you all next week, if not tomorrow night.